The Activision Blizzard drama between Sony PlayStation and Xbox is heating up once again. And man, Sony is looking pretty pathetic lately. There's a lot here to talk about. It's going to be a fun one, so let's get into it. Your eyes and ears are not deceiving you. I am back for a second video on back-to-back days. What is going on, everybody? This is Randall Thor 19, the man with the million, back again with another video. Hope everybody is doing fantastic. If you guys do me a huge favor, make sure you hit the like button, share this out on social media, and please hit that subscribe button if you're new. Thank you guys so much. Love you all. Oh man, it's been definitely a really interesting last couple days here. My video yesterday, we talked about Starfield getting a brand new release date, as well as the Starfield Direct getting dated for the same day right after the Xbox Game Showcase at E3 on June 11th. But that wasn't the only bit of news we had yesterday. The big specter that has been hovering around the gaming industry, especially around Xbox and Microsoft, has been the Activision Blizzard King acquisition. Will it get passed? Will it get blocked? What is going on? And while for a while there last year, I was really into it because we had Jim Ryan and Phil Spencer going back and forth with crying, flying, Jim dance moves, saving Private Ryan, saying some utterly ridiculous things. Sony was out there basically telling everybody that the deal needed to be blocked. The regulators had to protect not only the industry, but consumers as well as developers. This would destroy gaming as we know it. And we had a lot of fun talking about all that stuff, but eventually I just lost interest and I didn't want to talk about it anymore. In fact, I didn't really want to make any videos, but something happened yesterday that made me want to make this video. Some of you guys may know what we're going to be talking about because it is certainly really juicy, because it looks like we're coming to the end of this road, hopefully. Yeah, the FTC has sued to block the deal, but every legal expert out there has said that will get overturned in court if it ever goes to court, so that's not a big deal. There are reports saying that the EU is set to pass the deal, that they're okay with Microsoft's behavioral remedies, basically giving Call of Duty to everybody for 10 years, paying for a third party to oversee the deal, and then everything with cloud gaming, cutting a deal with their competitor Nvidia, seems to have satisfied the European Commission enough that they are going to pass the deal. But we have one hurdle left to go, really, and that is the UK's CMA. And nobody really knows what's going to happen there. It could get blocked, it might not. Microsoft could still avail. But we have some very interesting comments here from PlayStation about why the deal needs to be blocked, or at least why Microsoft needs to sell Call of Duty. It's all super interesting and very spicy. So, in its newly published response to these findings, Sony said Microsoft's bid to acquire Activision should be blocked or subject to structural remedies if it's to be approved. It said behavioral remedies would be insufficient to adjust to regulators' concerns because there were, quote, a myriad of ways that Microsoft could withhold or degrade access, which would be extremely difficult to monitor and police. Sony argued, quote, if Microsoft failed to comply with its commitment, it would likely only risk paying a fine, possibly many years later, but rivals' access to Call of Duty would be immediately foreclosed, irreparably damaging their ability to compete and ultimately harming consumers. Yeah, Sony's the ultimate good guy in this, about protecting consumers, despite the fact that they raised the prices of their games this generation, which Microsoft and everybody else soon followed suit, as well as raising the price of their consoles, blaming inflation and the economic situation. But good guy Sony, they got consumers' interest in hearts, right? You know, reading through this document, once again you get the sense that Call of Duty literally means everything to PlayStation, even though when you listen to their fans talk about what makes PlayStation great, they'll mention the God of Wars and the Uncharted's and the Last of Us and the Ghost of Tsushima's and the Death Strandings and the myriad of great exclusives that Sony has been putting out. But when you look at Sony's comments to the CMA, it all revolves around Call of Duty and how, well, basically it wouldn't be fair for Microsoft to own that because, well, it could destroy PlayStation and everything they've built in the process. Because that is how important they see Call of Duty, that if they didn't have it, or if the experience was degraded, or if the game was exclusive to Game Pass and not on PlayStation Plus, well, Sony might be irreparably damaged, despite the fact that they have all these incredible exclusives. The behavioral remedy that Microsoft wants the CMA to accept is pretty much the same one that they're saying to the European Commission, that they want to sign a 10-year deal with PlayStation, offering them content and technical parity, and giving PlayStation the ability to put Call of Duty on their streaming service, PlayStation Plus. But Sony's out here being like no to the CMA. This deal needs to be either blocked or Microsoft needs to divest itself of Call of Duty or Activision. We will not accept either or. In fact, these are some of their reasons against why the behavioral remedy won't work. They say that the different mechanisms available to Microsoft to avoid its obligations means any behavioral remedy is not suitable in this case. As the PFs recognize, Microsoft could deploy multiple strategies to fully or partially foreclose access to Activision content. In relation to Call of Duty, SIE is also explained that in addition to withholding access to existing or future Call of Duty titles, which Microsoft said they will not do, Microsoft could adopt one or several partial foreclosure strategies to impair PlayStation's competitiveness. These strategies could include raising the price of Call of Duty on PlayStation. Wouldn't that be something if Microsoft raised the price of Call of Duty on PlayStation 80 but kept it 70 on Xbox, PC, or on the Switch? Wouldn't that be something? Would never happen, but that's what Sony's claiming they could do. It's all about speculation about things that Microsoft may do in the future that could harm little old Sony. Degrading the quality and performance of Call of Duty on PlayStation compared to Xbox, degrading Call of Duty to ignore PlayStation's specific features for better controller haptics, or not prioritizing investment in such features, restricting, degrading, or not prioritizing investment in the multiplayer experience on PlayStation, or making Call of Duty available on multi-game subscriptions only on Game Pass. See, Sony doesn't want that. Sony does not want Call of Duty only on Xbox Game Pass. They would want it on PlayStation Plus, but they want it for free because they don't want to have to pay for it, because if they pay for it, because it completely screws up their entire $70 business model. So like, they're offering it to us, but we don't want to have to pay for it, so we want it for free. Oh, cry me a river, Sony. Now, this next part here is why I put pathetic in the title somewhere, because it truly is an absolutely pathetic argument that Sony is trying to make here. They're throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks and hoping that the CMA just doesn't understand video games enough. And they're like, yeah, that argument seems pretty good, Jim, deal blocked. So they go on to say that third, swiftly detecting any diversions from and ensuring compliance with the commitment as to technical or graphical quality would be challenging. For example, Microsoft might release a PlayStation version of Call of Duty where bugs and errors emerge only on the game's final level or after later updates. Even if such degradations could be swiftly detected, any remedy would likely come too late, by which time the gaming community would have lost confidence in PlayStation as a go-to venue to play Call of Duty. Indeed, as Modern Warfare 2 attests, Call of Duty is most often purchased in just the first few weeks of release. If it became known that the game's performance on PlayStation was worse than on Xbox, Call of Duty gamers could decide to switch to Xbox for fear of playing their favorite game at a second-class or less competitive venue. And it's kind of funny that PlayStation thinks like this. It almost seems to me like self-projection. I think PlayStation is worried that Microsoft might do to them what maybe they're doing to Microsoft right now, right? They mention at the very end about the fear of playing their favorite game as a second-class or less competitive venue. Considering that PlayStation has all these exclusive deals with Call of Duty for the past few years with extra skins or levels and all that sort of stuff, making the Xbox version second class. But then the funniest part, the pathetic part, is this idea of basically introducing bugs or errors during the final level of the game. And they even kind of contradict themselves here. They say they could introduce it after later updates, but at the same time saying that Call of Duty is mostly purchased in the very beginning, being like, well, a later update would come down the road after most copies were purchased, so it wouldn't affect you very much. Either way, this is just so pathetic that Sony would even bring up this argument that Microsoft would intentionally degrade the PlayStation version in some way. There are lots of games from Microsoft Game Studios on PlayStation, Minecraft Dungeons, Deathloop, Ghostwire Tokyo, and they all run perfectly fine. In fact, Minecraft runs actually better on the PlayStation 5 than it does on the Series X. It runs at 4K on the PlayStation 5, and on the Series X it's stuck at 1080p. But here is Sony worried that Microsoft might intentionally degrade the experience. I mean, come on, PlayStation. I understand that the arguments against the deal are kind of bad. I haven't come across a single argument that made sense about why the deal should be blocked. I know you're just trying to protect your business, and Call of Duty is so important to everything you do, but this one was just really pathetic. But it gets even worse, or roughly the same, right? So Sony goes on to say that Microsoft's proposal to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation illustrates why a behavioral commitment would be difficult. The Remedies notice explains that the CMA is open to theoretical possibility of a behavioral remedy, specifically because Microsoft informed it of existing and potential contractual arrangements with third-party platforms relating to access to Call of Duty. As the CMA is aware, SIE made known its concerns about the transaction of Microsoft almost a year ago. Yeah, as soon as that deal got announced, Jim was on the phone with his buddies at the CMA being like, this stuff needs to be blocked. You better do it. I like how they said that, like, we were telling you guys a year ago, this is no good for us, no good for PlayStation. In the intervening period, Microsoft has not shown any real commitment to reaching a negotiated outcome. They have dragged their feet, engaged only when they sensed the regulatory outlook was darkening, and favored negotiating in the media over engaging with SIE. Microsoft's most recent proposal, which SIE received, and it's redacted here, is telling. The idea here that Microsoft has dragged their feet and only engaged in discussions with SIE is so telling, and that they haven't really shown any commitment to reach a negotiated outcome. Considering Phil talked to them right when the deal was complete, offered him a new deal, and they offered him another deal later on. But we had Bobby Kotick, and I know everyone's not a fan of Bobby Kotick, and I am not either. But he went on CNBC and basically said, hey, Sony won't return our phone calls. But yes, Sony's blaming Microsoft about how they haven't really shown any commitment to make a deal. Are you sure it's them who has no commitment to making a deal? Or is it you that don't want to make a deal because you want the whole thing blocked? They go on to say that the proposal fails to provide an adequate protection for PlayStation's access to Call of Duty or for competition. Instead, it reveals Microsoft's lack of commitment to ensuring full and equal access to Call of Duty, confirms the risk of a behavioral remedy outlined in the guidelines, and reinforces SIE's belief that Microsoft intends to use Call of Duty strategically to dominate the gaming sector. So yes, the Microsoft that everybody makes fun of by saying that they have no games, the Microsoft and Xbox that constantly gets outsold almost every single generation, suddenly you go from Microsoft having no games and Microsoft's Xbox Series X and S not selling great because they had a 13% decline in the last quarter, to essentially PlayStation saying, you have to block this, you can't accept behavioral remedies because Microsoft would use Call of Duty to dominate the gaming sector. And PlayStation is the ones that has been dominating the gaming sector. And just this one little game, this one little IP that PlayStation is still going to have for the foreseeable future and have content and technical parity and everything that they could possibly ask for. But if Microsoft had it, they'd be dominating. So they have to block it for the good of consumers, for the good of developers, for the good of the industry. Come on, we all see right through you, PlayStation. Now, lastly, I just had to bring this up because Lulu over at Activision really makes grown man cry, weep, and just rage. So he said that Microsoft offered Sony, the dominant console leader for well over a decade, with 80% market share, a 10-year agreement on far better terms than Sony would ever get from us. We've also offered Sony guaranteed long-term access to Call of Duty, but they keep refusing. Why? And she had a follow-up tweet that says the CEO of SIE, which is my dude, Crying, Flying Jim, Dance Move Saving Private Ryan, answered that question in Brussels, and in Jim Ryan's own words said, quote, "I don't want a new Call of Duty deal. I just want to block your merger." Now, does it sound like Microsoft is the one who doesn't want to negotiate and sign a deal? Or does it sound like it may be PlayStation who doesn't want to negotiate and just is going to wait this all out and just throw nonsense at the wall, hoping that the CMA doesn't understand video games and gets that block? Now look, I don't know whether or not this deal is going to get approved or if it's going to get blocked. I'm not a mergers and acquisitions lawyer. I have just basically been bummed out by how long it's taking to come to any sort of conclusion. I promised you guys I would try to make more content. There were some really spicy things here that Sony has been saying against Microsoft, while Microsoft has been saying, we're going to play by the book and look at all these things we're going to be offering to you. So, you know what? I hope you guys really enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new. Check out the Patreon in the description below, all that good stuff. I really appreciate everyone who takes the time of their day to watch this stuff. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.